Welcome to Born Primitive Outdoor Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Snyder, and my brain is legitimately about to fry from the amount of meetings I've been in. But I have a longtime friend and a person that I'm going to make talk far more than I normally do, so I don't have to. Dale with Evolution Outdoors. Is it outdoors or outdoor? I screw that up every time.
It is outdoors with an S, yeah.
I nailed it. Perfect. So,
Yep.
Dale, I've known you for well over a decade now. I had you on the podcast before, but Dale kind of, well before I knew him, designed a broadhead that I was a huge fan of. Shit, over 10 years ago now. Probably 10 years ago. Yeah, it's been a while.
2012.
Yeah. And it was, it had, well, I'm going to stop talking and hand this off to you. Tell everybody a little bit about what you've got going on. And you're kind of an inventor. It seems like it hard. You like to make things, but all around good dude, and makes one of the, best broadheads I've ever used. So go ahead, Dale, take it from there.
Yeah. For me, it's more about, when I get into something, no matter what it might be, whether it be golf or hell, if it was basket weaving, it's basket weaving. When I find something that I feel is lacking, my brain turns to how can I make this better? And so, and it's just something that I've always done, even as a kid. My grandfather was a contractor, and so building stuff and making things work was always part of my childhood. So when I was in archery as a young guy, shot for Jennings way back when, and Martin Archery and all that stuff, and so got out of it for a while, came back in, and started what a lot of people know as the Gravedigger broadhead. And coming into it as really a nobody, it was a very difficult path. People were like, everything's been invented, there's nothing new you can do. And we went on to prove them wrong. Sold that company in 2015. The company that bought it, Plano Synergy, which is no longer in existence, turned that into a shit show. So I started my own company again, Evolution Outdoors. Started with the Jekyll and Hyde, which is what everybody's shooting now, and it was kind of interchangeable between fixed and mechanical. The mechanical is a hybrid, and so we've added blade designs, and again, that's kind of the general story, and then we can touch on different things as we go. But yeah, I'm actually sitting here on my computer designing a new product right now.
Gotcha. So that original broadhead, the Gravedigger, so that was just me. I was at No Limits Archery. Phil Mendoza owns it. I saw those and was intrigued by the hybrid broadhead. And, at that time, I've always been kind of I'm always testing shit, basically. So, and I did not get everything free way back then. I had to pay for a lot of stuff. So, for me, when I, was purchasing something, it had to have almost like, this sounds bad, but when you go to date someone, you're not dating them for their heart initially. There's got to be some curb appeal, right? Whether you're a boob guy or whatever. So I was like, that thing looks badass, So I grabbed them. I killed, I'm trying to think, I don't know, 4 or 5 animals with them. And what intrigued me about it is it was a hybrid. It was a fixed blade and a mechanical. At that time, keep in mind, like the rear deploying, forward deploying, broadheads. There was, I'm not going to list names, but back then the rear deploying primary at that point was not great. Yeah, it was Rage. I did not like it. Yeah, I did not like that broadhead. And so, and there was potential negative sides to rear deploying, meaning it can bounce off the animal. And so I had used a broadhead long time ago and did have on a steep quartering away shot, it kind of pivot off of it. So I'm looking at this broadhead, and again, context, I don't know Dale from anyone. And I'm just like, okay, that fixed blade portion is going to cause damage no matter what. Meaning if the broadhead didn't open, which back then was much bigger problem than it is now. There was some bad broadheads back then. So mechanicals. Then I looked at, okay, well, that should take care of some of the problems with potential deflection, meaning steep angled shots hitting whatever. So, I was like, yeah, it's all around. So now is it a piece of shit, right? How is it made? Blade steel, hardness, whatever. So did some testing and, it was unbelievable broadhead, did great. And then I'm going to let you take it from there because certain things did happen where I did stop using them for a bit. So.
Oh, sure. Throw me under the bus. So, yes, I sold the company to a big conglomerate and, private equity in essence. And in that, these private equity groups that are out there, most of them are not archery dependent. And I'll say that, or small brand dependent. What they do is they buy these companies. They think that their buying power is going to make them better and stronger. They use them for a short period of time. They capitalize on the quality and the hype that was created when they purchased it. And they look at how can we save money? How can we sell a bunch of these right now? And if everything goes to shit, they really don't care because the archery part of these big conglomerates is just it's a drop in the bucket to them. One of the big conglomerates just got sold for $2.5 billion on one part and $1.5 billion on the other. And the archery part was just like, yeah, what do we do with this or whatever. And so, when Plano Synergy sold, they got purchased, and they got purchased by Real Fishing. I think is the name of the company. And they wanted the Plano side. So they wanted Plano and Freybill and, all the fishing tackle and gear and all that stuff. Then they sold the hunting or archery side to GSM. And then GSM sold the Barnett side back to David Barnett. Archery's such a small business. And, if you've ever been to the ATA show, it seems like, wow, it's this grand thing. And then you can go to SHOT Show and ATA could fit in the corner of it. Nobody would even know it was there. So as big as this market is, it's very small. So when small companies are purchased by very, very large companies, you lose the vision of the people that started the company. And that's what happened to the Gravedigger Broadhead. They cheapened it. They wanted it cheap. They wanted it to go in Walmart, and that's what they did.
So on my version of that is the steel sucked and they'd break going into the target, and I stopped using them. That's my short version. Like literally,
yeah, they cheapened it.
yeah. I shot into probably like a Reinhardt 18-1, and the blades had broke off going into the target, and I was just like, oh well, that's not good. So I kind of had didn't use those for a while, and then. I got to know, I think I met you at the ATA, and then
right before we sold.
Yep. And then you ended up coming out or starting, Evolution, and, immediately I was like, oh shit, he's got it. So changed a few different things on it, on the broadhead, like as far as deployment or whatever. So at that time now I'm like, okay, well, Dale's at the helm. I'm not worried about that. So, with the broadhead, right, I don't shoot fixed blades very often, and I shoot a shit ton of different broadheads and have been involved in a bunch of different types or whatever. So, on my end or whatever was just basically like, okay, when I'm giving advice, for people getting broadheads, sometimes guys want to shoot both, and I'll let you take it from there. That's one of the kind of the beauties of your system is it's very versatile.
Yeah. So we were, with the Gravedigger, we were never fixed bladed. Guys were like, oh, it's just something else to fail and this, that, and another. and I get that. I mean, anything mechanical, I'm in a car or whatever, everything has to have service or there's a possibility of failure. And so if that's your philosophy, you can shoot a fixed bladed broadhead and or are mechanical, and they fly the same because aerodynamically the ferrule is the same, the blade surface is the same, and because our mechanical broadhead, our hybrid, doesn't have any dull edges on it, where most do. So most broadheads have some kind of a dull edge, and when that hits the hair and hide, that's what triggers deployment. Whether it's rear deploying over the top, doesn't really matter. That's what they have, and that's what triggers that broadhead to open. And so in that, we made one that doesn't have that, and then we can get into how they work in a few minutes. But that allowed us to put a fixed bladed broadhead in there and have the same aerodynamics. So they basically fly the same spot, which really people haven't been able to achieve from two different broadheads because the same broadhead manufacturer doesn't make that. So that's how we were able to do that. And now we've just been able to add blades. We make a whitetail fury, which is just a wider cut hide, 2 inches to 2 3/8. We make a turkey broadhead, and throughout our line, 100, 125, 150s, glue-ins, crossbows, doesn't matter. All our blades fit in every product. So it's completely interchangeable. It's modular.
So, let's rewind real quick because you list off the broadheads that are available now, like that you have, because you like kind of glanced at whitetail fury, whatever, before we fast forward too far ahead, because you've made me some pretty custom shit for something that I was about to go do. But like, what all do you offer like now? Because you've got the glue-in system that I really like for the, for your micros and everything else. But
right,
top to bottom, yeah, for kind of top to bottom on the broadhead arrow side. We'll go into the release later.
Okay, so like for broadheads, we have a screw-ins, which is 95% of the market at this point, and so we offer 100 grain. And our 100 grains are 70-75 aluminum, anodized because you can't get steel that light with the system we use. They're super strong. We shot them into cinder block walls, and they've been tested by every broadhead tester out there. And if you want to look at that, you can go look at Lusk and his stuff. But and then we have the 125s. Which is the other standard. We have 150 screw-ins. So we have those 3 screw-ins available. And then we jump to the glue-ins for the 166 arrows. And then we have different size collars. But we offer those in a 150. And we offer those in a 175. And then with those, you get a 10 grain collar or a 30 grain collar. And so you can adjust your weights down and up depending on what your needs are, what your arrow build is. And then we also offer arrows. We had some custom printed logo arrows, which are the Victory VAP TKOs, which is an arrow I extremely believe in. I think it's a super, super good quality arrow. And we will be offering an Easton version, or it's basically Easton's X10 parallel, and we'll be offering that in the custom build also. So those are the 2 arrows that I shoot. I believe in. You can't go wrong either way. They're top of the line for both companies, and that's what we're trying to achieve for that bow hunter out there, to get the best quality and performance that they can.
Okay, so with everything that you offer, what especially as you're growing in size, what are some questions that you get that you'd like to answer on the podcast? What are some? I know what I get on my Q&As, but what are some of the major questions you get on the broadhead? how it performs, what it does, and then, you and I can maybe answer them accordingly.
Yeah. So question number one is, do all the blades interchange with all the different ferrules? And the answer to that is yes. All the blades fit all the ferrules. So fixed, which is our Jekyll, Hyde, which is our 2-inch mechanical hybrid, Whitetail Fury, which is our 2 3/8, Turkey Wreckers, which is basically a strictly turkey broadhead. Those blades only deploy to 80 degrees. So, and then we have another blade that is the same shape of the Jekyll. We call it the Dangerous Game, and it will add 25 grains because of the weight of the blade to whatever ferrule you use. So if you have a 100-grain ferrule and you put a Dangerous Game blade in, which would make it a solid blade, that broadhead would now be 125 grains. And that goes up throughout the whole line. And all that is a solid blade. It's just more of a trad guys like it because they like the extra weight or, whatever. But as far as that, that's just a different version of the Jekyll blade.
Gotcha.
That's the biggest question we get.
Okay. So I know that's not the only one you get. So
definitely not the only one.
So one of the things I get, and I guess we can kind of bounce these back and forth, is the tension of the blades. Like, is the tension too much when you get them? Does it need to be adjusted when you replace the blades? Where should it be at? That kind of thing. Like that one I get a lot.
Right. So when a broadhead, we send them out so they're ready to shoot. And so what our locking system is, if you can visualize the bottom of the blades. So right where they screw into the broadhead, the part that goes below that hole is curved up. So it makes an indentation. And when you press our polymer pin in, which is specifically designed for this application, we didn't take a polymer off the shelf. Nick Fisher, they make vanes, largest vane manufacturer in the world, Knox, all the different ones. We went through about 20 different iterations of polymer combinations, and I use the word polymer because everybody knows what that is, but I don't even know what material it is. I'll be perfectly honest with you. And so in that, we created something that
Sam
would
Davis
collapse
on the mic who
that you could compress and it would expand. It wouldn't freeze or anything like that. So what I tell people is when you put the blades together, you put the pin in, and if there's any movement in the blades, which is possible because it is a polymer pin, you just snug down the pivot screw, the screw that actually holds the blades in the ferrule, enough to take the movement out. And then you're fine and you're ready to go. And it may feel a little tight, but trust me when I say it's not. The impact of an animal is so violent. And when these blades hit hide and get into the meat and the curvature of the blades, and we'll get on how they deploy in a minute, but that's what drives them open. So setting the tension is just put the pin in, smash it down, put the set screw in behind it, and if there's any movement in the blades, you can tighten down the pivot screw just to take the movement out. If there's no movement in the blades, don't do anything. You're ready to go.
Gotcha. Well, easy enough. Now, I will say there has been one occasion where I called and I'm like, dude, I'm like a 5-toed monkey. I'm having trouble replacing these pins. And I found for me, replacing the pin, the easiest thing to do, I just take it basically apart, but I actually heat up a little Allen wrench and just poke it through. And I don't know that that's good advice, but if people are having trouble changing the pin out, what would you tell them?
That works great. I mean, it really does. In that, so everything since your glue-ins probably have them, but everything since mid last year and all the new designs and changes we've made to the ferrules, that we made that set screw area where the polymer pin goes a 632 thread versus a 440. So basically it's bigger because we made it so that originally the 440, that pin was the same size of the inside of those threads. So when it got marred by the blades opening, it was very difficult to get out. Today, you should just be able to take that set screw out and push it through the little hole, and it should pop right out. So you shouldn't have that issue anymore with any of the new, and we'll even call them 2024 ferrules that are out, especially in 2025, because everything is that new design.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So, with, I guess what you're on the broadhead side of thing, you've talked before about the sharpening, like sharpness of blades, things of that nature. You want to kind of dive into that? Because I've had people ask me that question as well.
Yeah, we actually do get that question. We actually had one the other day that was that. And so our broadheads are designed with two things in mind. One, don't have the issue that you had when Plano took it over and the blades breaking. And two, how much damage they do. So a super, super sharp broadhead, you have to do two things. You have to grind as much material off as possible on that edge. That's what makes a very thin yet sharp blade. And to have any kind of retention to that, like you would your knives, you have to Rockwell harden them past 50 into 52, 54 to keep that edge. But the problem with that in a thinner blade, which is most are in a mechanical, they're thin, that makes them brittle. And that's what's happening when blades break. And you see it on some rear deploying blades where they hit and they break. And the reason for that is because they're over hardened and it makes them brittle. And so for our broadheads, we don't make them razor sharp. We make them sharp. Trust me. We have Band-Aids here all the time. People needing them, especially me. And so with more leading edge, that handles impact on bone and hide, so they don't dull as quickly. As far as hardness, we only harden them to around 40 to 44 is our max. And what that does, it allows the blade to flex and bend. And so when it hits bone, it will actually cut through it and create the damage that we're looking for. And because our blades land on a shelf, they have to have some flexibility, otherwise you'll just shear off. And so that's why I personally believe that a broadhead has to create some kind of damage. And we've had more, you and I have discussed this more than once. We've had more people call and say, hey, I made a bad shot. I gut shot my animal. But it created so much damage that it basically went 50 yards and laid down, and I was able to sneak back in and kill it. So that's the kind of trauma you want a broadhead to do. You don't want it to swivel around bone. You don't want it to just zip right through an animal to be super, super razor sharp, because that doesn't create trauma. And if you make a perfect shot, yeah, great, it's going to die. But if you don't, you need the trauma. And that's our philosophy, and it's worked really, really well for us.
Gotcha. So like with the pivoting blade, because that's something talked about, quite a bit, in the industry, has been off and on as far as the pro, the con, or whatever, like you said, the trauma. So, in my case, it's I have enough ass behind my arrow speed, arrow weight, poundage, everything else that, I don't really, I'll just blow through it. So I don't worry about it. So, you kind of made the statement there, but, I think where some people get to question is, okay, with lower poundage, trying to pivot around, whatever whatever it is they're shooting at. You know, I've gotten conversations where I'm like, man, if it's that low a poundage, you know, maybe a fixed blade might be better. And I'm not poo-pooing on anything or whatever. I'm just like, if you're shooting like that maybe that slow or that low of momentum kinetic energy, you probably should shoot a fixed blade broadhead is I guess what I'm leading up to. So.
I agree, because the whole thing is the hardest thing to do, and anybody that's ever skinned an animal, is they go down, you know, in the growing area where the hide is the thinnest, the hair is the softest, and that's where they start skinning an animal. And when you're talking about a rear deploying broadhead, or even an over the top deploying broadhead, you're asking it to deploy when it hits the hide or the hair, and then cut hair and hide fully deployed. That all takes energy. So once it gets in, if it you know, blade pushes to the side or swivels or whatever that situation is, you still had to create enough energy to get through the hair and hide fully deployed. So if you're a low poundage person, you're better off shooting a smaller fixed bladed broadhead to get through that hair and hide. So, and that's the difference with ours. And that's why some people say our, you know, the hide kind of defies logic because it penetrates so well. Because of that, it's if nothing ever happened, and you said it when you were talking about the gray bear, if it never opened, you're still shooting a fixed bladed broadhead. You're shooting a 4-bladed, fixed bladed broadhead if nothing ever happened, because there's no dull edges. So it penetrates like a fixed bladed broadhead, yet deploys and gives you the path that you're looking for, that cutting path, creating more damage as a mechanical inside the body where there's nothing to slow it down.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And like I said, you know, on my end, like I try to be, you know, common sense, you know, driven with everything when I'm, you know, trying to give advice and using different stuff. And the bottom line is, and I hate getting into the heavy FOC, all the other, you know, different arguments is, you know,
there's a happy medium, man. There's a happy medium.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. And when in doubt, use a fixed blade. And I'm a mechanical guy, but you know, when in doubt, you put a fixed blade on. That's kind of, you know, the
if
the
that's
motto.
your issue, if you're only thinking about penetration, then that's your only concern. And when we get a lot of people that ask about the hide, hey, I'm a 26-inch draw length and I shoot 60 pounds. You know, I'm a 24-inch draw length and I shoot 50 pounds. Do I have enough? And a lot of that has to do with your arrow setup. You know, what they do is a lot of these, you know, small, shorter draw length, lighter pound people, whether they're women or men or doesn't really matter, they tend to go with a really light arrow so they can get some kind of speed. And they're better off with going with a little bit heavier arrow so they have more energy when they get there. Like, you know, Sydney Ritz, Red Ritz's daughter, I believe she's 25-inch draw length, might even be 24 and a half. She shoots our glue in, you know, our arrows, 400 spine, VAP TKO, with our 150 glue ends in them. And she's shooting through stuff. I mean, she shot through a 300-pound bear, and her overall arrow weight is right at 400 grains. And so she's only shooting 45 pounds, I believe. So, and she shoots the hide. She actually shoots our mechanical. So again, we're back to penetrates like a fixed bladed broadhead, but once it gets in there, it cuts the path that you're looking to do.
Yeah. And it does definitely the most devastating hole. And, you know, some of this was just right place, right time, how the angle was. But I think I sent you a photo of it last year. It was a doe.
Yes.
And I can't remember. It was probably 8 inches long. When I hit
that's a quartering shot, though. I mean,
it was quartering.
Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
I said right place, right time, right angle. It was quartering. Correct. And it hit the you know, the rib, which kind of, you know, when the angle it was at, the broadhead kept demolishing the side of it, like just I mean, And then it actually pivoted the wrong way. So it pivoted to me after it left this giant hole and then broke the offside leg, shoulder. And so when it hit the ground like a rifle shot, I'm like, initially I was like, man, did I hit it in the spine? And I'm looking in my binos and I'm like, no, that pinwheeled it. Holy cow. You know, and again, like sometimes you'll hear stories of certain, and I'm not talking, you're any head, like whatever, like, you know, there's gotta be some, you know, when you're looking at it, like I've had a guy be like, man, this thing didn't leave a big hole. This, not your heads, like again, any,
right.
Sometimes like, okay, for example, if when you shoot something and you go through and the leg moves forward, there's less blood, or in my case, you leave a hole that looks like I got hit with a 50 cal BMG. It's scenarios, but I tell you what, that broadhead is very devastating no matter what. The biggest thing people have to understand is, or for me or whatever, that sometimes they'll worry about is what it takes to open it. And they get worried about that because they're fucking with it, right? And they're pulling the blades back or whatever. It's just not again, like people have said, hey, should I loosen the tension or whatever? It's just not. It's not an issue, I guess is what I'm getting at, right? It's not not the issue that people think it is.
No, it's not. And, you know, and not to say that we've never had, you know, something where somebody's played with it and it's locked, or, you know, in assembly, somebody, you know, way over tightened it. In essence, it's possible. I personally have killed a lot of stuff. And again, this is, you know, the owner of the company talking, I've never had one not deploy. So, but that being said, if it doesn't, let's say one time out of 100, every person that shot it, one time out of 100, it didn't deploy. You're still shooting a fixed bladed broadhead.
Yeah.
So if you make a good shot, it's dead. And so it's going to penetrate great. You won't have an issue. And broadheads aren't about your good shots. They're about your bad shots. So if somebody says, well, then why don't I shoot a fixed blade all the time? Because I don't have to worry about that. Yeah, but you'll never have the benefit of having a broadhead that opens when you gut shot. I mean, when I first started designing broadheads back to the when, I had settled on, when I got back into archery, I had settled on a fixed bladed broadhead. That was 1 inch by 1 inch, very sharp broadhead. And my buddy shot a buck using it, gut shot it. And I physically watched that deer go over a mile because it wasn't damaged. It just zipped right through it. And so at the end of the day, I want something where 99 times out of 100, if I make a bad shot, then it's going to save me. It's going to create the damage that needs to take place for that animal to go lay down so I can sneak in and shoot it.
Yeah.
Or come back and get it. One of the two.
Yep. No, I mean, that makes sense. Do you want to hit anything else on broadheads before we transition over into the release side of things?
No, I think that's it. You know, like we have on our website, I mean, the broadheads deploy on entry, not impact. So if you are, unlike you shooting a quartering shot, but if you're shooting a perfectly broadside shot, the entry hole should be the same size as the broadhead closed. You'll benefit inside the chest cavity where all the vitals are, where the broadhead expands and gets, and you'll get better, you know, exit holes. But unless you're shooting quartering shots, and again, that all depends on, you know, like I said, right time, right angle of which way the broadhead goes in, you could get some massive holes. And we get them. We get pictures of them all the time. You send them. We don't post them because it creates unfair expectations. So that is just a matter of, you know, where you were and where the animal was when the arrow hit and what position the arrow was in. But that's about it, man. I mean, the broadhead sales are great. We're growing as fast as we can grow. Customer service is our number one thing. If you have an issue, please do not hesitate to ask or call us or send us an email, because at the end of the day, we want our customers to be happy with what they have. And the last thing I want anybody thinking about is what's on the end of my arrow when I'm at full draw. And that's it. I mean,
no, I mean,
as far as releases go.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the release, because like on my side of things, I shot a hinge since birth, basically, whatever, like a long time. Like once I figured out I got target panic with an index finger, I shot a hinge. So, when people look at getting a hinge, right, it's very daunting. The click gets brought up. Is it too loud? Where animals, will they hear the click? And then I've had guys like buff them down, and then the click's no more because they buffed it too much with sandpaper. So
it doesn't take much. It really does not take much.
No, I learned that the hard way. So when you came out with that release, we were at attack. You handed it to me. I think I was shooting 80, 90 yards, and I shot a couple arrows. Like, yeah, it hits about the same. I'm good. You had sent a prototype to me, a couple prototypes, and then I'd used it off and on for, I don't know, a little while with the other release that I had been shooting. And then, I don't know, probably a year ago, 8 months ago, I went to, using yours full time. Kind of the benefit the benefit of Dale's is it's not audible. You feel the click. And then you can also reload it. So there was a lot of benefits, and I'll go into that here in a minute, that normal hinges, like when you hear that click and you don't want to fire, it scares the fuck out of people trying to let down. So that, that's an issue. And again, you're kind of a problem solver. So what made you design that thing?
So the original thought process behind this whole thing was, and this is going to sound really weird, but the professional archers, okay, so they were having issues having a hinge style release, which most of them like to shoot, in a thumb style release that hit the same spot. So what has created over the years, and Jesse Broadwater, he designed one with True Ball that's pretty close. It's pretty good. But all sears and hinges have operated the same way forever. Different adjustabilities and stuff like that, but they all operate almost the exact same way. And so I thought, well, why not because everybody's trying to make a thumb trigger hit where a hinge is. And so I went the opposite direction. I tried to make a hinge shoot like a thumb trigger. And so when we started developing this, I asked a bunch of people, what are your thoughts? Everybody had told me that I'm nuts and this will never work. And in the process, I started creating something that, and you've designed stuff or helped design stuff. And once you get past one hurdle, you solve the next hurdle, right? When you're building whatever. And so that's what this was. It was like, okay, how do I make it lock? Well, here's a way to make it lock. How do I make, it quiet? Okay, here's this it's now quiet. The being able to go back over the click was a byproduct of making it quiet. So it was like, oh, hey, wow, we can do this now too. So in that, all that development is how this all came about, and the accuracy of it. This wasn't something that was made in 2 months. It was something that was made over 2 years. So we did a lot of testing, and we've made, some small advancements in it since even it came out, and made some screws that were a little bit more structurally sound and this, that, and another. But that's how it developed. And before you ask, yes, we do have a thumb release that will match it. It's not out yet, We're still testing to make sure everything's good. But yeah, that's something that people will be able to switch back and forth, and that's what created this release. I've hunted with it. I shot that buck in Illinois last week, and I shot that buck at 40 yards walking because he wasn't going to stop. I tried, he wouldn't do it, and I shot him with a hinge. It's very possible once you get very comfortable with the hinge to shoot it just like any other release.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue shooting things walking with a hinge because I've done it for a long time. So I practice, so it's
all the time.
Yeah. And so you can, I'm not saying I'm something special. I'm just saying you can, because I've shot it enough to where, I don't mind the hinge. That was a big question when I first started shooting a hinge, and a bit, when I said we're talking like the original stands and zeniths. Like, it was pretty unrefined and very loud click if you used one. And so we've come a long way with that, but using it back then, I would shoot stuff walking without a click, right? There was no click, right? I mean, I would shoot stuff walking just standard dump on a hinge with no click whatsoever, but you get used to it. You just got to practice.
You just got to practice. I mean, it's not like anything else. And, it's something that, and years ago, they had these ISE shows. There's Sportsman's Expo is what they were called. And, they used to have this thing. It was a little pop-up target, and for archery, and it would range from 20 to 32 yards or something like that. It was indoor, and the targets would pop up, and you'd have a certain amount of time to do it. And a good friend of mine won it shooting a hinge, which nobody thought was even possible, and that was 10 years ago. So today's technology, the releases that are out there now, the refinement, like you said, this is all made. AE manufactures all the parts. It's all made here in the U.S. And it goes through a lot of testing and a lot of, QC before it ever even gets to me. And then we do all the assembly here.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Right on. Well, yeah, it's definitely a release I think people should take a look at, specifically if it's like, should I shoot a hinge? Should I not? But you're going, you're leaning that way. That it's one that I think that people would really cater to or not be as scared of in comparison to, some other ones or whatever. Cause I've been through just about every one known to man. I mean, the other thing too, it does fit in the hand well. There's a lot of different, I don't know, Jeff Hopkins, like Jeff Hopkins, a tournament shooter, he has a hand that's twice the size of mine, right? And you'll find different releases that can be too big or too small, and you can shoot them for sure, but you really want that thing as comfortable in your hand as you can, be. You don't want to be fighting against it, and it is very comfortable in the hand. So that's another big part of it.
Well, and I think the biggest part of the hunting aspect is being able to lock it on your D-loop. Being able to set it, click it on your D-loop, leave it alone, like a lot of thumb trigger guys. Gear come in that's quick, it's fast. You don't have time to get your release out of your pocket and even as an index finger, shooter, you have to clip it on and then go. So this is basically like a thumb trigger. You can clip it on your D-loop, leave it there, pick up your bow, grab the release and shoot. And then that's where, we've had so many customers say, I don't care what the release does. You had me at clipped on my D-loop. And so it's always a funny aspect.
Let me run through some scenarios with that, because I definitely, passed over that. And that's just for me using that kind of release for the hinge for so long that I kind of took for granted that it does. Is one, just whitetail hunting hanging in the tree. You just clip it on, right? It's on the easy hanger. Yeah. The other one where you really, is elk hunting, grabbing a call, right? Like you got your left hand holding your bow. If you're right-handed, right, you're bugling, you're grabbing, what, an estrus call or whatever. And generally, like before, I'd have to put my release in my pocket. I had set it down before and had to find it, which is why I always have a backup. And so with it clipped on, you can grab the bugle, throw it down, whatever. And that's a big part of it. And with the thumb button, you can certainly do that with certain models. The only problem with a thumb button is people will punch the living shit out of a thumb button usually. So a hinge is usually easier to get used to when it comes to that, right? That's the purpose of a hinge in a lot of ways, is to get, away from it. So that is a big benefit. Like I overlooked that, just from, years of getting used to not doing it. But believe me, it's definitely nice to have, right? When I say that, meaning, it's not like because I'd used an open hook hinge for years that I just unclipped Dale's release because I'm used to that. That fucker stays on. It is handy to grab the bugle tube, bugle, and then throw it down and draw back. So that's a big, big benefit.
Oh yeah. I mean, just last week, in the stand, I actually filmed the deer with my phone and said, "Hey, I'm going to kill him in 2 minutes." You see me put my phone down and pick up my bow, and the release is on it. So it's ready to go, and that is such a huge benefit. And like you said, in spot and stock, you make your last 10 yards, and what do you do with your release if you're shooting a hinge? Do you put it on there and then hold tension on the string, and then when you get there, what happens if you have to rearrange the animal because he's not where you thought he was? So this allows you to just let go of it, leave it on the string, arrange it, pick it back up, and go. So it's a huge benefit in spot and stock or tree stands, in general.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. And I always have a backup, right? I'm a primary and a backup guy no matter what I've got. So I have less likely chance of needing the backup, but I still have one. So I don't want anybody to call me and be like, "So you don't use a back?" 100% still have a backup release every time.
Yes.
So, but above me on that. Yeah, you have to. It's just, because just because it clips on doesn't mean you're not a dumbass and leave it somewhere. That's just a fact. So, but yeah, as far like people asking me like right now as far as my setup, and I mentioned it, but it's and I've tried a ton of different stuff, but like the tried and true, and I'm not goofing around with anything. I've got I'm shooting anywhere between 75 and 85 pounds. I can get a 300 spine. Well, I'm shooting the Evolution arrows, but it's a 166. I've got 185 up front. So a 300 spine arrow, it's cut pretty damn short, 27 inches carbon to carbon, 26 and a half, something like that. 185 up front. I goof around with fletchings all the time, but I'm generally shooting like a 2 3/4 or 3 fletch left helical. And I can get that arrow to fly anywhere between 75 and 85 pounds. As far as the broadhead, I'm shooting a glue-in system. Now, I do screw around with other component systems, and I'll screw in, different broadheads. I've got screw-ins of Dales or whatever, but like that 185 glue-in system, with the Hyde, right? I'm more of a Hyde guy than a Jekyll guy, but I shoot the Hyde. People ask if I tried the Whitetail Fury. I've tried them all, but I'm kind of a basic bitch, right? I'm ordering a Cafe Americano, whatever the fuck a basic bitch orders. But I use the same kind of thing. I test a ton of other stuff, and certainly a Whitetail Fury is great for whitetail major trauma. But yeah, it's the 185 glue-ins. It's with the collar, right? It's 185 total. And
yeah.
People ask me like with for me, I don't personally really ever reuse broadheads to go through another animal, even mechanical specifically. Fixed, I'll sharpen up when applicable. But usually what I'll do is if it's gone through an animal, I'll replace the blades if they need it. A lot of times I'll bend the blades back if there's a little bend or a chink. Honestly, I just tighten that set screw. I glue them shut, and they become practice broadheads for me. Now, that doesn't mean you can't replace the stuff. You certainly can, and I will, but a lot of times I shoot a lot of broadheads. I just always have when I'm practicing, and so I actually glue them shut. I don't know if you're going, what the hell are you saying this for, Aaron? But I when I say that, if I'm going to shoot all day, I'll have 8 broadheads, arrows with broadheads on them glued shut. Just gives me more of a warm and fuzzy that I'm shooting the exact same thing I'm hunting with. but you certainly can swap those out. And a lot of times, if it's a mechanical, I may turn it into a fixed when I'm done. Why would you do that? It's like, okay, well, I've got a bunch of mechanicals and very few fixed because I'm a mechanical guy. I'll turn it over into a fixed when I'm done shooting a mechanical. And so there's a lot of options you have with that.
Yeah. And now, so in all our screw-ins, I won't say all our screw-ins, in our 100 grain and 125 screw-in broadheads, if you purchase 6, you actually get a free practice head, and it is a practice-specific head. It is, the blades won't go in it. It doesn't do it, but they are sharp to a certain extent. So they fly the same as our regular broadheads do. And so what that allows people to do is they can shoot this practice head over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it won't break. And you don't have to glue anything shut. That's what it's designed for. And it flies exactly like your broadheads do. In the glue-in system that you use, which is what I use also, but that glue-in system, you can now get a practice blade that will go in where the Jekyll and Hyde blades go, then shoot it as a practice broadhead. And then what you do is when you buy 6 glue-ins, you get a free practice blade and a new front blade. And then you just switch those out when you're done. So that's become, and yes, that blade will fit in all the ferrules. So if that's what you want, and you just want to switch them in and out versus having a dedicated practice head, you can buy those blades and they will fit in all the screw-ins, all of them. They all go together. So think of everything as a completely modular system. And now you can absolutely take that and move, and be able to move between fixed, mechanical, and practice using different blades.
Yeah, definitely. Well, man, I've kind of covered everything I've wanted to. We didn't really script this. Is there anything else you want to hit? We're about to hit an hour. I probably should do a better job at that, but yeah, we hit everything I really wanted to talk about. Anything else you want to hit?
No. I mean, thrilled about your opportunity at Born Primitive. I think that's super cool. I've been working with those guys for a little while, thanks to you, anyway, and they're awesome. And I just wanted to, just thank you and everybody, our customers and everybody that's out there that believe in us, because it's a very hard thing to do to switch broadheads, and I get it. And if it's worked, like I said, the last thing you want to do is be thinking about the broadheads when you're at full draw. You just want to be able to concentrate on killing that animal. So, yeah, just thanks to everybody, and looking forward to another banner year. We have a couple new things that may hit the market. One in the gun market, and then hopefully our thumb release will be out. I don't know when, because we're really putting it to the test. So it may be a while, but it is in development. So bear with us.
Cool. Well, dude, I appreciate the friendship and support. Appreciate you coming on here. And yeah, as far as the broadheads go, if anybody has any questions, I mean, feel free. You can message me, about it. I've got some. I managed to zero out my phone over a year and a half ago and lost every photo I've ever had on my phone. So I lost some of the crazy, entry exit holes or whatever, but I still have some pretty cool stuff or whatever if anybody has questions on that. Yeah, other than that, man, thank you.
I appreciate it, man.
All right, man.
Absolutely.
Take it easy.
Thank you. You too.